Services.
Okay, so I'd like to introduce Steve and Lee Langer. They're local ranchers, and you have a CD of your dad talking about his life. That was Earl Christensen, rancher south of town, Lee's dad. And it's going to be a CD of him talking that Rhonda Stearns had recorded in about 2000, you said, Lee?
2001.
2001, so.
Joining you right here each week at this hour for a stroll back to a quieter, simpler time.
A time when neighbors visited neighbors and conversation around the old kitchen table was rich with humor, history, and real down-to-earth wisdom.
Come on in, pull out a chair. I'll pour some coffee right now.
A song of old San Antonio.
Mark, somebody's at the door. Can you check the door, please?
Absolutely. Check on those cinnamon rolls. Make sure the coffee's hot. I know we got Earl Christensen on the way in here today. Earl, by gosh, it's good to see you.
Good to see you. I wish you'd bring us some rain.
We're glad to have Earl.
If I hadn't had to bake those cinnamon rolls, I'd have had time to wash the windows, and that might have made it rain.
Yeah, that probably would. Well, Earl brings with him lots of stories. We've got a long line of history up there on the Christensen outfit, and we're awful glad to have him. Earl, how many years have you been in Weston County of Wyoming?
I've been here for 81, going on 82 years.
Born and raised right
Born
here.
and raised.
Right here in Weston County. Go back and kind of get us started. How did the Christensen family get to Wyoming, and where did they start?
My granddad come over from Denmark when he was 18 years old, and he worked on dairy farms till he got out to Alliance, Nebraska. Then he went to work for the Burlington Railroad, and he helped build the railroad into Newcastle and then on up to Cambria.
He arrived here in Newcastle in about 1889.
89.
So Cambria was just being formed, and Newcastle wasn't even a community yet.
Yeah, Newcastle just got moved from Tuftown.
So that's about starting as early with this part of the country as you could start, isn't it?
I think so.
Did he have trouble with English?
Well, no. By the time he got here, he picked up enough English, I guess. And of course, he spoke pretty good English at the time I can remember.
After he homesteaded and settled in the North Country, there was a Danish community around there. They used to call him the King of the Danes. Is that true?
That's right. These people that worked at Cambria, most of them took homesteads up on the prairie. It was kind of odd that they settled according to nationalities. The Swedes and the Danes all in one community, and the Polacks in another, Hungarians in another. And
Well, I imagine because of their cultural things, their celebrations, their languages, that gave them a common bond, so they kind of grouped together.
They sure did, but didn't make any difference what their nationalities were. They really worked together. I can remember when I was a kid growing up, those farmers up there used to deliver their grain into Cambria. And of course they had been in the wintertime when they hauled their grain, they'd leave their wagons down at Red Butte. Well, then they'd have to sack their grain in these beamless sacks, and of course it'd hold 2 bushels, so with wheat that'd be 120 pounds. Well, then they'd have to change from the sled then to the wagons there at Red Butte, but most generally they would travel together. I remember going with them into Cambria one time. Dad had a 4-horse team, and Krasinski boys, Walter and Stanley, they each had a team, and one of the Kudlocks had a team. And the reason for going together that way, that they'd have help transferring those loads from the sled into the wagon.
Where in Weston County did the Christensen Ranch actually start?
It started right up in the corner of Weston County and on the county line of Crook County.
On Soldier Creek?
On Soldier Creek.
Now, did you get over into South Dakota at all?
No, we're about 10 miles from the South Dakota line.
You've been in Wyoming your whole life then?
10-4.
Tell us who your grandparents were and who your folks were.
I never knew my dad's mother. She died a spring before I was born. My folks was John and Alma Christensen. My mother come down to Weston County to teach school, I think about 1916. She and Dad got married sometime after that. They were married November 6, 1918.
Now, was your father a homesteader?
No, my dad never took out a homestead. He worked there with my granddad until when he was married. Then he leased a place joining granddad's place. The place he leased was Johnson Place. Is where Chuck Krasinski lives now.
Your family has been stockmen their whole lives.
Right.
Now, when your father started ranching out in there, did he expand the ranch over the years?
No, he really didn't. He probably may have bought a adjoining place, one place, but other than that, he stayed on the original 160.
I was interested to read that your mother's maiden name was Butterfield. Do you know from family history if they had any connection with the Butterfield stage line family at all or not? Did you ever pursue that?
Her family come from Nebraska, but they weren't in relation to Butterfields up in Crook County.
The Butterfield stage line was a national thing in the early days, and I think a lot of the family was in California. Her dad was a blacksmith.
At Blacksmith's, right? And
That was quite a trade in those days. They had lots of work to do.
that's right.
Music has always played a real important part in everybody's life, and we'd like to give the old Victrola a spin, and we'll see if we can get out one of those fresh cinnamon rolls, Rhonda.
I'll get those while you play this song.
This is the Rubber Doll Rag with Mr. Chet Atkins.
Chet Atkins does a good job.
I gotta turn around. You got anything you want to add?
I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Anybody got any questions about what we've heard? We might know something.
That's right.
The Johnson place, when you spoke of the Johnson place, what Johnson would have that been back in the day? Up north in that country, do you
You
know?
have to ask my brothers. I don't know.
Okay.
The Johnson place.
Yep, I was thinking. I do not know which Johnson that was.
But it's so fun to listen to Dad when he's been gone now for 15. This is 10 years he's been gone. And it's just awesome to have that voice on there. Haven't heard him talk for that many years, so that's just a blessing. I'm glad that they put that together.
I'll give her a shot.
Well, here we go. Listen to the Johnson rag. Is that what it was? You guys can dance by then.
No, not yet.
Can't push on through
I don't know where we go. You got any stories to tell?
That's it, baby.
Now that's, for him, is being pretty quiet.
Now, how did you get to this country? Are
Me?
you native to this country?
No.
No,
She was. I'm not so much.
right.
I was raised in south central Nebraska in the hills, Broken Hills country between the flat and then there was the hill country where I was with all these creeks that ran to the river. And so we were dry ground in between irrigation both sides. But my folks, my father's father came from Germany, Eastern Germany. And he and his wife both came over here, I think, as teenagers or at least young adults. And I presume they knew each other or their families knew each other or something. But they never saw their families again. The idea, I guess, was that they would come over and find a place to move the family over, but they never did come. And so we do not know much about our history. But my folks were raised in Kansas, and when they first got married, they were in Kansas. And then they had 4 girls there, and I don't know how many, but I know at least one or maybe more was born on the kitchen table. And when they moved back over to Nebraska, then I was born. And that was a new deal. They had 4 girls, and then along came Steve. And Dad looks at that thing down there and he says, well, Mom, we can do better than that. So they had another boy. And so I don't know if it's the air in Nebraska or the water or what, but things changed for them.
And I was born right here in Weston County, in Newcastle at the old hospital. And I lived here all my life. And we've been now 54 years. So that's quite a stretch for him to put up with me.
It's a two-way street.
But anyway, it's been a good life for both of us.
Yeah.
And Janice, where did you go to school here in Upton?
No, I went to school, graduated in Newcastle. I went to country school for the first 7 years out there at Fairview. And a one-room schoolhouse, and one teacher, and there was a little teacherage back in the back. She lived right there.
Do you remember who your teacher was?
First one was Mrs. Taylor, which was a lady that inspired me for music because she could play amazing. And we had Christmas plays and wonderful times out there for 7 years. And then my 8th grade year, I went to Newcastle and then graduated from Newcastle High School. So we've been around. But Wyoming's a good place to live, and that's why we're still here.
Yeah.
We like Wyoming.
Yeah.
We're real thankful and praise God we live where we do.
We're at in Nebraska, Steve. You said South Central?
Yeah, you cut the panhandle off, and then the middle of what's left, right on the Kansas border.
Oh, okay.
Really close, a little town called Superior.
Yeah, I've been told to see there the other day. My mother's from down by Broken Bow.
Oh, yeah.
So I've been through that country a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, the last couple of times I was there, I've never wanted to go back. But the last couple of times I was there, I remember thanking God so very, very much for getting me out of there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I got that.
thank God.
My
I'm in
brother.
Wyoming.
My brother brought him home from college with him. And so he ended up working for my parents. And I was 14, and I thought he was kind of cute, and he talks like Donald Duck. So some people say, is that why you married him? No.
I think she told some girls that.
But he does a good job. You ought to show him how you can do that.
Well, what do you want to do?
Oh goodness. So anyway, my brother brought him home, and then we ended up getting married in December of 1970. So this has been our life.
That would have been in '66 when I got out here.
His mother brought him from Nebraska, dumped him off at the college with no vehicle and no friends.
I did not know anyone in Wyoming.
And then he got hooked up with my brother Wayne.
Yeah, that was an experience
But
for both of us.
we better listen to the rest of this song.
Does anybody know how to forward that or not? That might be a good thing.
I don't know where to stop it then.
It's sure good music though.
Yeah, it
That's
is.
good.
Welcome back here to the Double Spear. Earl Christensen's our fine guest here today. Earl, how many kids were there in your family?
There were 4 of us. I was the oldest, and I had 3 sisters. My youngest sister was killed in a forest fire accident.
Now, was that up on the
That
place?
was up on the place, yeah.
Can you expound on that and tell us a little bit about it?
This happened just before hunting season, and I suppose there's some poachers went along there by Georgie Bendura's and tossed out a cigarette and started the fire, and it went from Georgie Bendura's and on over to our place.
In the early 1950s this was, wasn't it?
Right.
Tell me, your surviving sisters, who are they?
My oldest sister, Angie Morrison, she lives in Cheyenne. Her husband passed on. He worked for the railroad. My other sister, Ruth D'Amico, lives in Denver. Her husband is a retired engineer. Was up here in Newcastle one time as an engineer for the highway department.
Well, now, Earl, when you think about growing up there on Soldier Creek, was there lots of duties for a young man?
Well, there was a lot of chores to do. Had to help them milk the cows and gather the eggs.
Tell us about thrashing. How did you go about thrashing?
In those early days, first experience I remember was at the Johnson place, and Blige Johnson had the thrash machine. He had a steam engine, and I remember going with my dad one day gathering up enough wood for the steam engine. Then I can remember then going around with the water hauler. They had one-armed Johnny, and I think Albert Taylor was hauling water, and there's a wooden barrel, I guess you'd call it, on this wagon, and pumped water then out of a dam and delivered it to the steam engine.
Now, you had to hand shock a lot of things then.
Oh, everything was shocked by hand, you bet.
How big a cruise did it take on some of the thrashing?
Well, the latest would be 6 bundle wagons. Most Johnny, they run about 8 bundle wagons, and a couple fellows hauling grain.
From what Clyde Ice has told me, it was quite an art and a science to have the fire just right so that it was making exactly the right amount of steam to keep the pressure running at the right speed and capacity all the time too. Just couldn't anybody go in there and be the fireman. They had to really know what they were doing.
No, I think Merle Johnson took care of the steam engine. Then, I guess the second year that Blige thrashed for us, he of course had the agency for Case Tractor, and he had these.
In addition to the weekly printed version of the newsletter journal, we also promote our community and share important information on our award-winning website, newslj.com, and in our weekly email newsletter, Nuke Now. We also connect with readers through various social media platforms and invite you to check us out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can even take a look at a recent meeting of the City Council, School Board, or County Commission on our YouTube channel. We do hope that you will go to newslj.com and subscribe today, and we look forward to making all of our great content available to you. But regardless of your level of support, we thank you from the bottom of our hearts for doing your part to preserve a free and independent local press.
Thrash for us. He of course had the agency for Case Tractor, and he had these cross motor tractors. I don't know whether you ever saw one of those.
No, I don't believe I have, bro.
This thrash machine, I suppose, was probably a 36 or 38 inch machine, and the tractor didn't have enough horsepower to pull it, so he welded a pulley on the opposite side, and then he ran the thrash machine with two of these cross.
Really?
Tractor.
Pretty ingenious idea.
Ingenious, what?
It was.
When you think back of some of those crews, did everybody get together and help everybody else thrash at the time?
Everybody exchanged work with that.
That was just a way of life back then.
Right. The later years, we had our own thrash machine. I remember coming into Newcastle and picking up half a dozen high school boys. Well, there was good help, and they were in shape then for football. Newcastle has some good football teams in those years.
Yes, they really did.
Tough kids. When you shocked up the grain stock after that, now that was also a lot of feed for your livestock in there, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Talk about putting up hay a little bit back then, too.
In the beginning, everything was mowed with game horses, and then raked, and then buck rake, and then we had an overhead stacker.
So it was put up with an overshot type.
Right.
Thing. Now, you think the grain still things ought to be put up with the team and the horse through yours?
No, I don't think you get enough help to put the feed out.
Not a lot of people even know how to put a harness on these days. I'm interested in the horses that you used. Did Dad and Granddad raise their own draft horses, or did they buy them, shipped in here?
No, I think they most done it very well. I know Granddad had a Percheron stallion, and he got this Percheron from over Elk Mountain.
Do you suppose he bought him from Bill Stearns?
I wouldn't be that
He
surprised.
raised a lot of them over there in Elk Mountain.
He had this stallion for several years till he injured himself there and got too cold one winter. Then after that, Nell Smith got a Belgian stallion.
Well, it took a lot of horses to power all the equipment and do all the farming that they did on the prairie.
That's right.
You know, Earl, you've always been pretty much a horseman your whole life. You've been around the draft horses and the saddle horses. Tell us about the saddle horses of those days.
Well, I'll tell you what, the saddle horses really got broke in those days because we didn't have any trailers to haul them around. Where we went, we had to ride.
Left the house horseback and came back the same way, didn't
That's
you?
right. I might mention one time Christie and Pete Smith had their cattle down there in Character. And we went down there early one morning when we left, I suppose, the ranch about 4 and rode down to Paramount and gathered these cows. Then we let the calves out and kept the cows in the corral. There was 4 of us. And we trailed those calves then from there up to the prairie.
I believe that this is one that somebody told me about years ago. And when they brought these cows and calves in, then they sorted the cows out and they took them somewhere else. But now they got to take these calves home. And so, how you going to do that? The story I heard was they gave everybody a little can that had rocks in it. And they went in that corral and started shaking these cans with rocks in them to scare the calves. And after they ran about a mile or so, they settled down and they could just drive them on home. I've never heard of that anywhere else, but somebody had their think tank going. Yeah.
Those calves would have wanted to leave.
No, they wouldn't have wanted to leave that place. And Earl said something about milking cows, and evidently his grandfather especially, and maybe John too, did have quite a few milk cows. I don't know, but I do know that Wayne had to milk the cows at home before he made it to school in 1st grade. And I have never heard of any other kid milking the cows before school in 1st grade. Yeah.
Try to get
You
some
woke
of
up at 4:30. It's rice now, but when I was a kid, our ranch was dairy. Now, we didn't milk, we had machines, but you woke up at 4:30, you got through your 300, 400 cows, and then you went to school after breakfast.
Oh boy.
Breakfast was always ready for you when you woke up. And then you got home from school and you did it again.
There you go.
kids were raised to work, weren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah. They are.
Yeah, and I've said for years, and that's part of what's going on around us now. Our kids,
No ethic.
I'm sorry, they don't know what their body is capable of because they don't have to. Yeah, I think it's very, very sad. I really do.
Uh-oh.
What's funny is that 4:30, that alarm clock is stuck in me.
Yeah?
I-
Good.
Uh-oh.
That's not a bad one.
I always turn my alarm clock off before it goes off. It's set for 6. I never hear it.
Yeah.
Track.
But you also go to bed.
Yep,
You don't stay up all night.
that's right. You ain't no night owl, are you?
Good morning, I'm Mark.
Yeah.
Well, Earl, you mentioned riding to school. You went to school in more than one location on the prairie, is that right?
Right, I started out at Horton. We lived,
Well, Earl, you mentioned riding to school. You went to school in more than one location on the prairie, is that right?
right, I started out at Horton. We lived at the Granger place that time, so it wasn't too far for me to walk over to school. My first teacher was Mrs. Casey, and she was some relation to the Pazinskis. She lived in that big house that afterwards moved over there by the Portwood place. And she had 2 daughters of her in school. Ed Pazinski and Sam Lappy and I were the first graders. And Ed and I made the first and second grade that first year. Then the second year I started there. Well, we was going to be moving down to Soldier Creek that spring. After Christmas, I changed schools and started going down to what they called Pleasant Valley School. It was in a Patsy Ross house close to where Walt Pazinski lives. I would get on my sleigh and I'd ride down there to the Kai's place where Avery's were living. And Avery then, of course, would take his kids and me then to school over the
Rest of
team.
the way.
One time there in the spring, I remembered a lesson that really helped me out. We went past my granddad's house and picked up this cook. He was a pretty good sized cook. The horses got down, and it was in the spring of the year, and the sled roads were breaking up, and this team got down this drift. So Dad had to unhitch. Of course, he always packed a chain, so we all had to get out, and then he hooked the chain on the end of the tongue and pulled the sled on up. Well, then we had to walk up then to get in the sled, and this fat cook was stuck. And Dad said, well, he'd come back with a team and a chain then and pull her out.
Yeah.
Well, she got to wiggling her feet and got out. So this spring I was going home, and I went down at a drift, and there I was stuck, and I was too far from the house. Anybody could hear me. And I remembered about this cook.
How she kicked her feet.
She worked her feet, and that saved me.
You know, it was deep snow in those years. And you went to high school in Newcastle and were active in FFA and everything. I thought the incident about the yearlings that you raised to get your money to go to college was kind of interesting.
I graduated from high school in 36.
That was 2 or 3 years ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so. Well, I was kind of tired of going to school anyway, and I just didn't have any money to go on to college. So Dad and I borrowed some money from the bank, and we bought some yearling steers from Nell Smith at $30 a head, and we bought a bunch of straw stacks for $10 a stack. And we bought that old hard cottonseed cake, and a hired man and I hauled straw that winter and fed these steers. And that winter, January, never got warmer than 30 below. Well, that next fall, when we sold these steers for $60 a head, made a little bit, so.
And that 30 below winter made a college classroom sound pretty good to you, didn't it?
I started at university in 37, and I worked at anything I could find, 25 cents an hour. And then my sophomore year, I got a job with the University Food Service, worked 3 hours a day for my meals. My junior year, they built a student union, and there was space on the third floor for about 21 students, and so I got a room there. And then I had a janitor job there at the dorms. That paid for my room.
Paid for your room.
And I still had the food service job. And then I handled dry cleaning at the dorm. That gave me some spending money. So the last 2 years, I got by pretty good.
Kind of had a free roll at college, but you worked for it, didn't you?
It sure did.
Yeah, everybody was expected to work then. There was definitely no free rides. What was your major in school?
I majored in animal production.
Tell us a little bit about the University of Wyoming back then, and also what did it cost to go to school back then?
There was about 1,700 students when I started, and in those years you could get by for about $1,000 a year then.
Times have changed.
And when I graduated, there was 2,100.
So it's definitely gotten a little more expensive.
Oh, you bet.
Do we have some more music to listen to today?
This looks like kind of a nice old song. It's called Cluck Old Hen by Alison Krauss.
That's too bad. Alison Krauss is good.
I'll listen.
It's okay.
The Fairview country and further west out there where you live now, how has it changed over the years, Earl, since you started ranching in there?
The biggest change out in the country is roads. When we first moved out there, there was barely just a trail from Fairview over to where we live. But now we have good highways. And
Highway to Newcastle, highway to Upton, whichever way you want to go.
Right.
It was really remote over in there next to the Rochelle Hills, like when you and May were married, even where Dad lived over there was pretty well remote. But with the oil fields coming in, that brought, of course, a lot more
Right.
roads. And
How have the cows changed over the years? You know, when you look back when you started into cow business and you've made a lot of changes and upgraded and everything, talk about the changes.
well, the size of the cattle have changed, particularly with the Herefords. They used to be little short, blocky Herefords, and now they're long-bodied Herefords. We made a change over the years. We've started crossing the Herefords in with Angus, and we've got very few Hereford cows left anymore. He was forced to really change because the buyers was always paying more money for blacks and black crosses than they were Herefords, and it's still that today.
Now, in the summertime, you run on the Forest Service, is that right?
We don't have any Forest Service. We have land leased from the home stake that joins us.
Okay, and you run up in that country, pretty country up in there. When do you turn up in the spring, up into your summer pastures?
We don't start hauling up there until about the 1st of June.
You know, one of the great events around the country is the Christensen branding. Kind of tell us about that.
We've made quite a change in our branding operation. We used to take 2 or 3 days branding, but we've cut it down to 1 day, and we run 3 crews. Walter takes a crew, Wayne takes a crew, and I take a crew. Well, this past May, we branded over 900 calves, and we was through at 12:30.
And then you had some dinner out of the deal.
Well, now you mentioned homestake. Tell us a little bit about the Mosquee country up there. I've always been fascinated with Mosquee and homestakes holdings up there, and that was kind of a social center for dances and so forth for you as a young man living up there too, wasn't it?
Yeah, they used to have a lot of good dances over at Mosquee. We were only about 9 miles from Mosquee.
And that was a big logging and sawmill operation in
It
there?
was, yeah.
Almost a community to itself, wasn't
It was. We used to haul oats over to Mosquee for their horses.
For their
Of course-
horses.
Of course, everything, their operation was all done with horses in those days, and it was an art the way they loaded those logs with those horses. There was a team that they top-loaded with that practically worked themselves.
That's what I've heard. I've always been so fascinated with that whole logging operation and what they did at Mosquee.
You can probably find out from Charlie Clark. He was there about one of the last times they top-loaded with horses.
Actually, he and Levon lived right there at
Right.
Mosquee for a while. We're hoping that he'll be
We're gonna have to
over here
invite-
to visit at the Devil's Fair one of these days.
Earl, you've been a long time Mason. When were you raised as a Mason?
Well, in January of 42.
And you've come up and you've served your time and you've made the top man too, haven't you?
I'm a past about everything.
Held every office and every lodge they have in the state of Wyoming, I think,
Yeah,
almost.
I worked with joke stores. I'm a past associate grand guardian of the joke stores in the state. And I'm a past worthy grand patron in the state. I'm a past potentate of Caliph Temple. I'm a past grand master in the state.
Nearly everywhere I go, if I say I'm from Newcastle, Wyoming, people say, well, do you know Earl Christensen? We know him in the lodge. And then, of course, you've made a lot of friends and acquaintances through your political career. You've served Weston County in the Wyoming Senate for 24 years, starting in about 58, is that right?
58.
And then you were Senate President in
69.
1969, so.
Tell us about being a senator back then. You know, that's a lot of work. Took a lot of guff too, didn't you?
I'm glad I served when I did. I wouldn't want to serve now. When I started out, I was only representing Weston County. Well, in the later years, then they put us in with Crook County. Those business people in Cheyenne hated to see that happen, lose so many rural legislators, because they said they were the ones that was looking out for their business.
Sure.
And now, rural communities just aren't represented.
Don't have much
Well, like, for
representation.
instance, Bill Barton is having to represent Kirk, Weston, and Niobrara, and then parts of 2 other counties. It just isn't fair to these rural people.
There's no equity in the way that it's apportioned, it
No.
seems to me like.
Can I sneak one more cinnamon roll, Rhonda?
Yes, I'll pass them around again.
Okay, we'll
Fill the
pour
coffee
some
cups.
coffee in here, give the Victrola a spin. This song seems so fitting to raise 2 daughters, and this is a song called Dancing on Daddy's Boots by Gene Prescott.
I don't know, but I think we missed part of the beginning of this somehow because it starts talking about Cambria and Peter G. And we missed all that, didn't we?
So if you want to eject it and take it out and then put it back in, it'll start over.
I don't know. Oh. Yeah, you better stay over here, help us out. But there's a lot of history from the beginning that isn't on here yet, that we've missed somehow. But Dad and Mom, they've done a good job raising us kids. We was raised with honesty.
Good morning, I'm Mark.
I'm Rhonda. Welcome to the Double Spear Ranch Radio Show. We'll be joining you right here each week at this hour for a stroll back to a quieter, simpler time.
A time when neighbors visited neighbors and conversation around the old kitchen table was rich with humor, history, and real down-to-earth wisdom.
Come on in. Pull out the
Welcome back here to the Double Spear. Earl Christensen's our fine guest here today. Earl, how many kids were there in your family?
There were 4 of us. I was the oldest, and I had 3 sisters. My youngest sister was killed in a forest fire accident.
Now, was that up on the place?
That was up on the place, yeah.
Can you expound on that and tell us a little bit about it? Welcome back here to the Double Spear. Earl Christensen's our fine guest here today. Earl, how many kids were there in your family?
There were
Well, we're missing all that for some reason.
Go ahead and start it over again, Lee, like I just did. Eject it all the way, take the CD out, and then put it back in. You're probably just gonna have to listen to their introduction, listen through it.
Do I have to push it back in or will it go?
Huh?
Here it goes. It's going.
It's gonna go. So, yeah, you'll probably just have to listen to Mark and
The new store. This is the one-stop shop. We have a pharmacy. We have a bootlegger's liquor. The deli, the food that you can get at a lunchtime is so amazing. The coffee shop. Certain Friday mornings, there's 30 people sitting here in all these chairs. This is the hub for people to come and visit, have their coffee, have their donut. It's amazing what this area has done. Totally amazing.
it's gonna go. So, yeah, you'll probably just have to listen to Mark and Rhonda.
Welcome back here to the Double Spear. Earl Christensen's our fine guest here today. Earl, how many kids were there in your family?
There were 4 of us. I was the oldest, and I had 3 sisters. My youngest sister was killed in a forest fire
I should have
accident.
brought
Now,
my
was it-
CD player in. I don't
You know
know
how you operate it. It's all right.
but it's going right to 2.
So when they talk about
You probably just have to
I'm
listen
Mark.
to them.
I'm Rhonda. Welcome to the Double Spear Ranch Radio Show. We'll be joining you right here each week at this hour for a stroll back to a quieter, simpler time.
A time when neighbors visited neighbors and conversation around the old kitchen table was rich with humor, history, and real down-to-earth wisdom.
Come on in. Pull up a chair. I'll pour some coffee right now.
Melody, a song of old San Antonio.
Yeah, and that's why
Mark,
they
somebody's
had
at the door. Can you check the
a
door?
lot of
Absolutely.
that
Check on those
country
cinnamon
up
rolls.
there
Make
was
sure
owned by
coffee's hot.
them,
I
and
know we
they,
got Earl
well,
Christensen
several years
already
ago,
here.
sold
Earl,
out
my
most
gosh,
of
it's
it.
good to see you.
Good to see you. I wish you'd bring us some rain.
Pardon?
We're glad
Oh
to
my
have
If
Earl.
I hadn't had to bake those cinnamon rolls, I'd have had time to wash the windows and that might have made it rain.
Yeah, so it probably would. Well, Earl brings with him lots of stories. We've got a long line of history up there on the Christensen outfit.
somebody else.
We're all glad to have you. Earl, how many years have you been in Weston County of Wyoming?
Yeah.
I've been here for 81, going on 82 years.
Born and raised right here
Born and raised.
right here in West.
Who had the Logan?
Jake Shook.
No. The company that had
When
all
I
that
started
land.
completely over again, when she
Yeah.
skips it, it's skipping the track. So it's the stuff that they want to hear is on the
Yeah.
first track, and it's skipping that when she moves it
Remember?
forward.
No.
Sorry.
Diana asked you a question
Yeah.
and we don't know the answer.
Well, yeah, you answered it. I just, when you talked about Mosky, seemed like it was a place. I always just figured it was the area, but it was a place.
And I'm having trouble thinking of that logging company's name. They rented land from them for years, and I think still do. There
They
was,
still have stuff.
yeah, there was one time when they sold that it went to a neighbor or something, or somebody, but they got it back. Yep. Anything else?
Well, my great grandparents came from Denmark. I don't think we heard that part. But anyway, we've been around ever since then. Peter G. was his name. They built a house on the hill, and I think we've skipped through that part.
Yeah. They actually, he evidently had a reputation for helping the neighbors.
Yeah.
And in fact, he had a red barn, and on the barn, they had painted in white, Steve,
House on the hill
no,
was on the house.
it was the poorhouse on the
Poorhouse
hill.
on the hill.
It was poorhouse on the hill, because they had a reputation for helping anybody, and anybody that came by, didn't matter what time of day it was, if you needed to come in for some rest or something to eat, you got in there and you had it, you know. And so they were just that kind of people. And when I came to this country, they kind of took me in. And so
Hospitality.
yeah, and that's another one that's dying. People just don't neighbor like they used to. One of the things I think a lot of people that know about Earl would recognize him as a politician or, you know, some other area in his life. But working out with him and gathering cattle up and stuff, I can tell you that man was a stockman as well. And back then, if you were a stockman, you were probably a cowboy. And I don't know that anyone else saw something that I did one day. But we were gathering cattle for brandy. And one of your dangers on those young calves is that they will try to run back to where they feel safe. And if they don't know where their mother is, they're confused and they want to go back. And he got after this calf that was wanting to go back. And he was up on a hill above a creek bottom. And just as back then, almost everybody in this country tied on hard and fast. And that made some things good, and it could really get you in a wreck too. But he rode up on this calf, and I remember seeing him throw that loop for just all the rope he had, because when it went over that calf's head, there was just enough to get over that calf's head, and then of course he tied on. That's all he had to do. But I mean to tell you, that spoke a lot to me. That guy not only knew how to handle cattle, but he knew how to handle the rope a bit too. I know one time, I don't remember when that was for sure, but we were gathering cows out of the timber. And I'll tell you, some of those cows, when they get up in that timber, they were like deer. They did not want you to gather them out of there. And when Earl came back, he had shreds of a shirt on.
He had a white shirt, but it was shredded.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But he got the cow.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was a good cowboy.
Yeah, he really was.
He was an honest, wonderful man.
Janice, do you have a favorite memory of your dad?
Favorite memory of my dad? Well, that was probably when we got older, because he loved music. Him and my mom used to play. She would play the piano and he would get out his fiddle, and they used to play together when they was first married. And so that love of music came down through them to me. And I've loved it ever since I was in grade school out there with that school teacher. And Dad made a wash tub, and we donated it to the museum in Newcastle. I think you have it in there. And he packed up that, and he was playing with these other guys at the nursing home before I ever got into it. And so one of my favorite memories is playing music, and he was over there playing on this tub with us. Don Gose, Eddie Cargill, David Hallwell, and I was on the piano, and we just had a blast at the nursing home. And we did that for a long time until he couldn't do that anymore. But he even played when we was up there at Mondale. We'd take his tub in there, and he would play with us when we play in the back room back there. So music has been one of my fond memories, being with my dad. Some more memories was being at the legislature with him when we was kids. And I'm sure we was terrible for those poor people in the Senate down there.
They were a little wilder than town kids.
Oh gosh, but we had a lot of fun growing up.
And one of the things I heard about Earl and music was that when he went to the University of Wyoming, I don't think he had ever played the fiddle before that, or had he?
I don't remember about that.
I'm not sure he had, but he ended up in the orchestra down there playing the fiddle.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it was his ear. And this girl knows where some of the notes are, but reading music isn't her deal. I never saw anything like it though. One time there was a song that I really, really liked. And I told her one day, I says, you need to play that song. She says, I don't know that song. And I says, I know that. And so several days later, I went whistling through the living room there, and she was up by the piano. And in about 10 minutes, it was coming out of her fingers. I do not understand that, but it's a gift. It's a gift.
Yeah, music's always been good. It's been a blessing. In fact, Don Gose is 98 years old, and him and I still do music over here at Antelope Heights twice a month. And he can play that sax, and he remembers the songs, and I can play whatever, and he's right there.
What days are those of the month?
The second and fourth Thursdays of
And what
every
time?
month.
At 2 o'clock.
At 2.
2 o'clock.
Yeah, we're playing there this afternoon to entertain those people, and that's fun for them. Brings back a lot of memories because we do old
It's
songs.
fun for them.
One of the first times I ever started playing down there in Newcastle with Don and Eddie Cargill, he was wonderful on a banjo. He could play the banjo and harmonica at the same time. And the first time I ever played down there with those guys, I come home and I told Steve, I says, I can play anything, and they just play right along with me. They know exactly what key it's in, just like that. So, music is fun for me, and God's been good to us. It's by the grace of God that we are where we are today,
Yeah.
because He has been good to us.
Oh, it's
And I
amazing.
really thank my family, because they had a house out there south when we first moved up here from Laramie that they let us live in and raise our kids. We lived there for 23, 24 years
22.
until God moved us on, and but God did some amazing things with us while we were there. So,
Yeah.
but I'm very thankful for a home to raise our kids. They were out of town. We didn't have a local telephone, and we didn't have that they could call their friends. When they got home, they were ours. And they did their chores. So
If they had to talk to a kid, one of their buddies in town, they better say what they were gonna say and get it done, because it was by the minute.
yeah, and they didn't have these.
Right.
Yeah,
So things have changed. But I'm very thankful for the opportunity to raise our kids out there.
yeah, that was worth a lot,
Yes,
a lot.
because we were close to my family.
And not only that, the kids learned a work ethic and
Yeah.
to be responsible for what they had to do. It was a wonderful thing for us.
Was.
And how many kids did you have?
3.
3.
We have 2 boys, and 5 years, well, the boys are about 2 years apart, and then about 5 years later come along the real treasure, I guess.
Well,
Better
it's
not
another
tell them that, but they're all treasures. But we got a surprise gift.
Well, they're a blessing when you
Yeah.
get a surprise. They're a blessing.
Yeah, I know.
They're no
Yeah.
accident. God had a plan for us.
Okay.
He did. So we have, our oldest son lives in Douglas. He has a wife and 2 girls and a son-in-law. And we have a son in Sheridan that has 2 boys. And a daughter lives in Belfush, and she's got 2 kids of her own, and she's remarried and has 3 more. But we've got 10 grandchildren out of the deal, so that's really cool. They're awesome.
I remember when my kids were in 4-H with your girls, or
Mhm.
with your kids, with Gail. And the most favorite thing I remember about that is she taught the boys how to get cow kisses.
Oh. Now that's
And
good.
Aunt Jessie would have a fit, because Jerry had a bum cow, or bum calf, and he taught, her name was Teddy Bear. Give him cow kiss, and Aunt Jessie used to have it. And I said, well, Gail taught him.
Yeah, we have a picture of Gail giving a steer a piece of cake.
Yep, and
Yeah.
then that's how we did with Teddy.
Yeah,
Put
from
your
her
mouth in.
mouth to
Yep,
his
and
mouth.
Tongue latched it right
Right up
up.
your face.
Yeah. Yeah, our kids was in 4-H all through the raising up. They sold their steers, and all that money went into savings, and all that money got all 3 of those kids through their schooling, including one going to law school without any debt.
And not only,
Yeah.
it wasn't only the steers, but that helped a lot.
Yeah,
Yes, it did.
that and scholarships.
Yeah.
So God has really been good there.
Yeah.
And being a grandparent is really fun. We have fun with our grandkids. And they're all grown up now, getting big.
Probably it's an old joke, but I heard somebody say one time that grandkids are your reward for having not killed your own.
That's a fact.
We didn't ever really want to kill one, but we made them think so. Yeah. I believe that we would be amiss if we did not tell you that absolutely the greatest thing that ever happened in our life was accepting Christ as our Savior and our Lord. And one of the things I've been trying to talk her into is a miracle that He did for her to get her attention. I think you ought to get onto that, babe.
I'm an obedient wife. Anyway, we spent a lot of money on a cow one time, and it was supposed to be a good investment. And you know, over the years, that's one thing we figured out. When we don't seek God's counsel on some stuff, we've made some mistakes. This cow was one of those. We bought her from a place up in Montana. She had 3 calves.
Brinkley doesn't play any of those sports, but I know that if she wanted to wrestle or play lacrosse or rugby or something, I would be very glad that she has it to where she could do it with women and not with the men.
Did you see it, Sonia? Blowing up
What's
this
that?
fast and this big? Did you? I mean, you're.
I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised. I know that girls have wanted to have that opportunity to do that. And so, you know, it's daunting to think about wrestling boys, and it's tough when you go into a sport pretty much knowing that there's no way I'm going to win, and to keep at it and keep passionate about it. And so to have your own division where you're wrestling against, you know, women, because like Alexis said, it's biology. The boys are going to be stronger in high school than you are, no matter how good you are.
Cow was one of those. We bought her from a place up in Montana. She had 3 calves. Every one of them was born backwards. The first one, he probably was there to pull. The second one, we was gone someplace and we knew this cow was going to have a calf, but we didn't have her in where she should have been. So I held the spotlight out the window and we drove around this pasture, and God finally located that cow for us. We pulled it out, it was backwards, and laying there in the hay, and it was late at night, so we just went to bed. He gets up the next morning and that calf was bleeding from the navel. So that's not a good sign. He was really weak and down and not going to get up. And so he just drenched that calf for 2 or 3 days, well, probably just a couple. And then he couldn't have this calf stand up. That calf weighed over 100 pounds. He couldn't make it stand up. So one morning he says, he went up and drenched it, and he says, why don't you take a bottle of milk up there, of colostrum type stuff we had in the freezer, and see if you can get that calf to suck. And that's pretty funny because he couldn't pick it up and I couldn't, definitely. So I went up to the barn and I was on my knees over that calf trying to work its neck so it would want to suck. Working its mouth, and it just laying there slobbering, and God was trying to get my attention, and so I just looked up and I says, oh God, please help me. And that calf jumped up just like that. It running over to Mama and started sucking, wagging its tail like it had done it before. And to our knowledge, it never had been up. So I came down and after I sat there in the barn and listened to those birds sing for a while, and it was so peaceful in the barn, you could just feel God's presence right there. And I come down and I told my mother-in-law who was there, I says, Grandma, you're never going to believe what just happened to me. She goes, oh yes, I will. What happened? So anyway, that was in 1985 that happened. And the next year that cow had another backwards calf, but that was the last time she went down the road.
And as far as being a move of God, it really moves me because I knew that was God trying to reach out to her and get her attention. And for some reason, if we do not want to acknowledge God for what he does in our life, we will try to make it look like something that we can understand without him. And I know there's a lot of people that fall in that rut. And I kept thinking, oh, this was going on or that was going on. And about that time I was thinking like that, a friend of mine found out that God was putting rhymes in my head. And he gave me a book to read of another cowboy poet's work. And I remember reading in there one of these poems that most of the stuff I was getting was just 2-line rhymes. And he had these deals in there where there were four-line scans with 1 and 3 rhyming and 2 and 4. And I thought, how could the human mind ever get from point A to point B telling any kind of a story with all that going on? And at the same time, I was trying to make this deal with this calf work, according to some way or another without God. And the next poem I got was what I call My Lady and My God. And I'm going to do that one for you. Have you ever heard, we lived on Lone Tree, about 24 or 5 miles south of Upton. Have you ever heard of God walking up Lone Tree Creek? Well, he sure enough did one day. And he paused to pull off a real trick. He saved the life of a calf in the hay. Now, Mama Cow looked on, feeling kind of sad, as my wife tried to convince her calf to suck. After a day and a half, things are looking bad, and this baby's really running out of luck. Well, some things God pulls off for you and me, and some things he leaves us without. And I can't always see the difference, what the difference might be, but his wisdom I ain't gonna doubt. As a lady kneeled on a common barn floor, God touched a baby calf and said, "Rise." Help was what she had asked her Lord for, but when he got up, it was to her surprise. He headed for dinner time and was wagging his tail as my lady washed. Her Lord held in awe. He left all memories of being frail and became a story that could, a cold heart thought. Have you ever felt you were under God's smile in a place filled with peace, plumb safe from all harm? My lady said that God just paused there a while. I could feel him. His presence was in that hall. And that made it undeniable to me that God had been there and done a miracle for her.
That was just one of many that happened out there. God worked on us a lot out there. We got a
Yeah.
brand new pickup in 1984,
Oh, boy.
and I tried to put lots of miles on that truck. So in the meantime, we had lots of problems with that truck. I think we were being tested, but we still have it. It's got over 300,000 miles on it.
We got most of the kinks worked out.
But you'd ask some favorite memories with my dad. He was wonderful with liking to do things with horses, and the wagon trains that he organized and did, the snow festivals that we had up on the prairie, and I think the last one or something was at Mallow. Those wagon trains was a blast. We went on 4 different ones. First one was to Douglas, and we did one to Gillette, and another one they did to Douglas, and one to Newcastle through Sand Creek and stuff. Yeah, there was 4 of them, and wonderful, wonderful times. So that was a wonderful memory, and Dad was really good at organizing things.
Well, I did.
I like to be in the background. I don't like to be out in front doing stuff. He does. But my dad did too. He liked being out there. And he was good at what he did. Yeah, he was good at what he did. We're very blessed to have the parents that we have. Because he came from good stock too. Even had to come a long ways to get out here.
Yeah, there's another miracle. I believe. I really do.
Anybody got any questions?
Was your dad a hunter?
He did some hunting, but I think he's got sons and grandsons that probably like that a lot more than Dad did.
Mm-hmm.
He
had done some, yeah.
Yeah, he done some elk hunting and stuff before we ever showed up.
Yeah.
But he liked the country life. He liked doing what people need done. He was an honest politician.
Well, and not only as far as ranching and stuff, but he helped get the phone lines put in out there, out south, and organize Pre-Corp before they were called Pre-Corp.
It was REA at first.
Yeah, he helped get that going, and was on the board for years, and then Walter was on the board for years. Yeah.
No more questions? I can't think of any funny stories.
You can.
No, not that we can share.
Oh yeah, I got one. Now Earl was in order for a lot of people to believe, they would believe that he was always straightforward and pretty quiet and everything. And one of his favorite things after they got the phone in was calling neighbors in the middle of the night and asking them if it wasn't time to get up and check out the necessary room. And it passed on to her brother. Wayne inherited that later. And so that was kind of a family affair there deal for a while. But I had another one I was going to go with. Oh yeah, when he and May were first married, and then they bought the place out south. And he moved her into a little house that did have no electricity and no running water. And I remember him saying to me, or someone, I was there and heard it anyway, can you imagine finding a new bride these days that would live in that house?
No.
Probably not.
No.
But at any rate, one time they were out there and they had to clean the cistern. I don't know if a lot of people got in on things like that, but a lot of these old country houses had a cistern up on the hill, and then it just gravitated to the house. And so every once in a while, somebody had to go down in the cistern and clean it out. And so he and May were in that cistern, and I don't think they'd been married very long, is the impression I got. And I guess there was things he wanted to know about his bride. And so he crawled up out of there and pulled the ladder up out of there, and then he looks down at her and says, "Do you love me?" I don't know if he got the answer he wanted or not.
How long did it take for the lumps to go down?
I never heard the end of it.
He loved to dance, and Clareton Hall used to be out there out south. And we were raised up going to those dances, and what a blast that was. But anyway, he had taken this school teacher, and that was on that CD. But he had taken this school teacher to this dance, and I don't know where the dance was, but they played Home Sweet Home, so he took that girl home. And then he come back to pick up a friend to take him home, and lo and behold, they'd taken up an offering to pass the hat around and place a little more. And they were playing music, and that's when he hooked up with my mother. And they started dancing, and they were only together and dating.
From May till December or something?
It wasn't even that long. It was about a month before 6 weeks where they got married. I mean, it was a short courtship. And that one lasted for over 67 years.
Wow.
Or something like that. And that was all on that CD. But yeah, my mom and dad was quite the couple. And one thing she wanted, he was really encouraged to run for governor.
Oh boy. I think he'd have probably been a governor.
But my mother, what was it she said?
She says, "Well, does the governor have a wife?" And he said, "Yeah." "Well, you won't." And he didn't run.
I'm glad he didn't run. I wanted my parents to be together. We always told them, you can't ever leave each other because we won't live with either one of you. Yeah. So anyway, we've had a good life. Good direction, good examples to follow. Because I think that's really important. Any more questions, Miss Cindy? Or
I
Anita?
don't have any more, but no. Something I wanted to add, that CD that you have, we have a cassette tape at the museum in Newcastle. We're in the process of digitizing all those cassette tapes. Our plan is to eventually put them on our website and then just have them on an external drive. So anyone who would like to go and listen to that whole, about the Cambria and some things that we missed today, you'll be able to.
It would be on there.
So, yes.
Yeah, and I gotta talk to you about that, because we got family that wants copies made of this. Because it is good. The whole thing of Dad talking is really good, because it comes from Denmark forward to where they are today. For some reason we missed that, but if you can get it on there.
We'll make it accessible.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you for inviting us.
Thank you for coming. We appreciate your time and your knowledge. We appreciate it.
Well, there's probably a lot more we could tell, but can't think of it right
We
now.
can schedule another time.
So thank you very much.
Thank you.